Hey, it's Mark Ferguson with Investor More. Today I'm going to talk about reporting rent to credit bureaus and if this is a good idea or bad idea for landlords and tenants. And there's a lot of myths out there and a lot of misinformation. And a lot of people think landlords don't want this. They don't want tenants to get good credit. But in fact, it's probably the landlords who would want this more than anybody. And it could be detrimental to many different tenants if this was the case right now. So we'll talk about the pros and cons of both. It could be good and bad for both parties in certain situations, but we'll try and shed some light on what exactly it means and what happens now, and if it's even legal to do this too. All right, so this is one of my older rental properties. It was completely trashed by tenants. This was after we had remodeled it and fixed it up again. I rented it again for a while, then I ended up selling this property. But if we had reported rent to credit bureaus on this property, it would have completely destroyed the tenant's credit. Well, that might not be true because it's hard to say exactly how rent impacts credit, but it would have shown up on their credit report and made it very, very hard for them to ever rent a property again, most likely. So that's the thing about reporting rent to credit unions. It's not really done now for the most part. Some companies do it, some property management companies do it, some national, property management software companies will do it. But just because rent is being reported to a credit bureau doesn't mean it's always going to be good for the tenants. So yes, it will report that they're paying on time or paying rent, but if they're paying late or not paying at all, that will also show up on there. And that's a huge red flag to many landlords, obviously, if tenants aren't paying rent on time. And a lot of people think, well, if they aren't paid on time now, it shows up. It doesn't. It does not show up on credit reports unless you're part of one of those companies or property management companies or the rare landlord that reports rent to credit bureaus. So I have looked at many, many different credit reports on potential tenants, and I've never, ever seen late rent reported on one. We've seen some disastrously credit scores and situations, and we often see the reasons why. I've never seen late rent as listed as a reason. Now, you will see judgments from property management companies or landlords if that tenant went through eviction or they got so far behind in rent and the landlord took them to court or turned them into collections and was able to get a judgment that way. But that was a judgment against their credit, not late rent. So it can show up in that form. But again, that's not the landlord reporting late rent. That's getting an actual judgment, collection, something like that. And then an eviction will show up too in most areas because that's a public record, a court record that will be on your credit report. Although many states and areas are trying to stop evictions from showing up on public records because they don't think it's fair to tenants. I don't think it's fair to landlords personally, but some people think it's not fair to tenants that they got evicted and then have to tell people they got evicted when trying to rent again. And some states are trying to limit that to like 3 years or something like that. There's a lot of crazy laws going on right now. And there are some states that are trying to eliminate credit reports altogether and say you can't check credit. So Colorado has actually enacted a law where you can't check credit if the tenant is getting all of their rent money from public assistance. So if they're not spending any of their own money, it's all public rent money, you can't check their credit. So they tried to make it even broader so that you couldn't check credit on almost any tenant, but that did not pass, thankfully. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on out there that is not good for many landlords. And just because it's not good for landlords doesn't mean it's good for tenants either, because if landlords have to jump through more hoops, they have to pay more costs, they have to have more bad tenants, that just raises rents and their costs and makes them sell properties, which means there's less rentals, less inventory, costs go up, and that's why you see the highest rents and the highest homeless rates in the areas that tend to have the most strict landlord rules and are most friendly to tenants. And Colorado also is one of the fastest growing states for homelessness, and we keep enacting stricter and stricter landlord rules. And the problem is there's not as many rentals, prices go up, and landlords want to sell. They don't want property. So here's another property that I actually ended up selling to because we had a tenant trash it. I thought it was better to fix it up and sell it than fix it up and rent it again. This tenant also had bed bugs, other issues. They didn't pay rent for months and months. And I don't think we had to go through a full eviction. They finally left before the official eviction went through. But again, in this situation, right, we started the eviction process. We didn't have to go through the full eviction. That might not have showed up on their credit report. But if everybody was reporting credit and late rent, it would have. And so as a landlord, I would much rather have late rent, other issues on rental properties show up on your credit report than not. And I'm sure the good tenants who pay rent on time, never have issues, would rather it show up too, because it might be able to help them build their credit a little bit for buying a house if they want to. We've had a number of tenants who've rented our properties who end up going on to buy houses. It's awesome to see that. And we just had that happen recently at the complex with some tenants. So it's not always good for tenants to have reported, but it can help in some instances. And we want to talk about credit reports and how that can help a little bit. And the truth is, while it can help, you don't have to have rent reported on your credit to build good credit. There's so many different ways to build good credit. All right, so this is from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, a .gov site, just giving you information on how to get or keep a good credit score. And it's not rocket science. You don't have to have rent to do this. Basically, pay your loans on time. That's number one rule. Don't get close to your credit limit. So if you've got a $20,000 credit card and you're routinely at $19,000, $20,000 maxing it out, that's not a good sign. That means you're using all the credit you have. It could be a sign that you're not, being wise with your money. That can hurt you. But if you have a $20,000 credit card and you always pay it off every month and you've got $20,000 in available credit, that can actually help you. So that can help build credit and shows you actually have available credit too, which is something that credit scores look at as well. They don't just look at one credit card or one car loan, they look at how much available credit you have, because if there is an emergency and you've got available credit, you might be able to use that credit to take care of it. Where if you have no credit cards and no debt, you might actually be worse off than if you have that credit card for emergencies and you don't have an emergency savings fund, etc. And of course, yes, it'd be great if everybody had an emergency savings fund and savings and money. Not everybody does. So a long credit history will help you. So the sooner you establish lines of credit, the sooner you are paying them and showing good payment history, the better your credit score will be. They're saying only apply for credit that you need to an extent, but if you don't need a credit card but you want to build a credit score to maybe buy a house, you could apply for a credit card that you don't need, use it for minimal purchases, pay it off all the time, and that can really help you build your credit. Again, you want to be careful with that and not overburden yourself, but that could be an area where you might apply for some credit that you don't exactly need right away, but could help you build your credit. And then fact check your credit reports, make sure everything on there is you. I've seen judgments before where a similar named individual was showing up on someone else's credit report with a judgment, and it wasn't them, but it took them a while to get it taken off and fixed up. And so the sooner you find that, the better off you'll be. Now, this doesn't give a ton of in-depth information. The best spot to go if you want to improve your credit score, if you want to fix your credit score, if you want to see what you can do, is talk to a lender, right? Talk to a mortgage broker, a bank, someone who's going to lend you money on a house, and they will tell you exactly what your credit score is, if there's anything wrong on it, how to fix it. And if you don't have a credit score right now, they can tell you how to build it. And the best thing is it's free. They won't charge you to do this. So the number one way to build your credit and check it is go talk to a lender, talk to them, see how it all works and what will help you. And like I said, having your rent reported may not even be that big of an advantage, but all this other stuff you do can be a huge advantage and be done pretty simply, pretty easily, as long as you make your payments. And like I said, on this house, we had bed bugs in there. The tenants had them once. We went in there, tried to get rid of them. They got them again. And when they moved out, what we ended up doing was superheating the house. So we had a company that comes in, like tarps the house and heats it up to like 180 or 200 degrees or something and just fries all the bed bugs. And we've had to do that a couple of times, and that has always gotten rid of them. I think they guarantee the results, but it costs, $1,000, $2,000, I think, to get that done. So it can be pricey. Again, those costs that get added onto the landlord usually end up in increased rent or fewer rentals, and that increases rent as well. A lot of people think rent should automatically be reported to credit. I'm not saying it should or shouldn't be. Like I said before, it's not really a loan, so it's a little tricky. A lot of times, people have to use a credit score, not just to get a rental property, but they might have to use a credit score to get a cell phone or get utilities put on their name and not pay a high deposit, things like that. And those aren't usually reported to credit either, unless there's a judgment issue, like I said, which can come up with rental properties too. So I'm just trying to give some of the ideas, the pros, cons of reporting rent to credit. Now, like I said, you can do it now. There are a lot of different ways to do it. Some require landlord consent. Some require the landlord to pay some money. Some require the tenant to pay some money. So there's different options out there on how to actually do this now if you want to do it. And I wonder, we don't do it as a landlord. Maybe we should start doing it. There's a dead bird. That was really weird. If we do start doing it, if that would give us better tenants, because it probably would scare away a lot of the tenants who don't pay on time or know they might have issues, and it will get reported to credit agencies. It's a possibility. So how do we actually report that now? All right, so I'm on Experian, which is a credit service. I believe they have free credit reports still. I've used them for some credit alerts, like if I can sign up for their free alert thing, and if something happens to my credit, they'll send me an alert so I should get notified. I can check it out, be like, oh, what's this? Or, yep, I remember doing that. Or, wow, I've applied for a lot of loans lately. So this also has some information here on how to choose a rent reporting service. So if you want to report rent as a tenant or a landlord, here are some different options. Now, I would say this, there's been some questions out there if it's legal, if it's privacy, if you're invading privacy to report the tenant's rent to rent reporting agencies. I would say talk to an attorney, lawyer, whatever, for specific legal advice. I'm just kind of sharing what's out there right now. And since Experian is putting out this information, I hope it's good information, but it's readily available to find this information. And every state has its own laws and rules and different things about tenants, rentals. Always make sure you're abiding by those and checking with those. We have a lot of different stuff going on in Colorado that we're constantly checking on and looking at, just like the mediation thing I'm supposed to go to tomorrow, which we'll have an update on that with my tenant who's behind on rent because we can't evict them unless we go through mediation. That's a little bit crazy if you ask me. We've got to share background reports and credit scores, reports with tenants now. We can't charge more than 2 rent security deposit. We can't ask for more than 2 times income. There's all kinds of different stuff we can't do in Colorado now. And Colorado is becoming one of the more strict states as well. Like I said, ironically, we also have some of the highest crime rates and homelessness lately as well, too. All right, so if you pay rent, you may want to get credit on your credit report by using a rent reporting service. You can choose a rent reporting service based on fees and which credit bureaus receive reports. Rent reporting services are companies that collect information about your rent payment habits and supply it to the consumer credit bureaus, Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. Adding this kind of information to your credit report may improve your score. So, how to choose a rent reporting service. There's lots of different pros and cons. Fees, you may have to pay a small fee to have your rent payments reported. The landlord also may have to pay a small fee, so that might be one reason why landlords don't want to do it. Like I said, some services charge you a monthly fee, but others charge your landlord. Service location eligibility. Your particular rental unit may not qualify for every rent reporting service, so check your eligibility and the services available in your area. And a combination of bureau reports. Not all rent reporting services report to all 3 credit bureaus. You may sign up for one rent reporting service that reports to all 3 credit bureaus, or sign up for a couple that each report to 1 or 2 bureaus. So there's all kinds of different stuff going on here. Like I said, it's not an automated, simple thing like when you get a mortgage and it automatically is reported. Okay. Experian Boost is a completely free feature that makes it possible to report qualified rent payments directly to Experian. In addition to your rent payments, you can add things like your eligible utility, cell phone, and streaming service. Look at that. We were just talking about that. On Experian, tenants, even non-tenants, can go in there and try and help their credit score by reporting those things directly. So there are things that tenants can do to help their credit score without hoping other people do all the work for them. Not saying everyone's like that, but there are a few. All right. You connect a bank account, credit card to Experian Boost, confirm the rental properties, and there you go. Again, if you're not making rent payments on time, doesn't mean it can't hurt you either. Now, other options for the rent reporting service. Rent Track is an option that reports to Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. If your landlord is already using Rent Track, they can be submitted for a monthly fee. If you want to get credit for past rental payments, they'll report up to 24 months of past payments for $50 paid by the renter. Reports to all three. ClearNow, landlords who sign up with that have tenants pay rent directly through ClearNow portal for a fee. Tenants don't pay anything, and they report to Experian. Only reports to one, right? Pay Your Rent, another option for reporting to all three credit bureaus. Your service is free for landlords and renters. And if you live in a participating rental property, you may select your unit from Pay Your Rent's menu and sign up to have your rental payments reported. So there's all kinds of options. Again, some are free, some aren't, some are available in some areas, some aren't. And reporting rental payments can help consumers without a credit history or those who are repairing their credit. That's because rental payments can help you build a positive payment history. In an Experian analysis, 75% of scoreable consumers who added their rental payments saw an increase of 11 points or more on their score. So again, an increase of 11 points is definitely an increase. It helps, but it's not a massive increase. So like this says, payment history makes up 35% of FICO score. Credit scoring, the biggest portion of your score. Adding more payment accounts can help strengthen your payment history. So it can help, but it's probably not going to fix a whole lot of problems and magically make bad credit good. Or if you have no credit, it still takes some time to build that credit. So, final things to consider: deciding how much to spend is important, what goals you have, and let's see here. Here's their final paragraph. But if you're not too worried about improving your credit score across the board, consider avoiding rent reporting services with fees. You may choose a free-run reporting service that only delivers information to one or two bureaus, like you said. And I'm surprised they don't mention the cons of doing that, of if you are not paying rent, but that would definitely be one of them. But here you go, here are options. There's lots of different other websites and options out there to tell you how to do it, how it works, and landlords, like I said, can sign up for some of these as well, and depending on your state and local laws and all that, possibly require their tenants to be a part of it before they rent their properties. So I'd love to hear what people think about this. Should credit automatically be reported to credit bureaus, or should rent automatically be reported to credit bureaus? Should it not? Should it be up to tenants? Should it be up to the landlord? Should it be up to both of them? There's lots of different ways this can be worked and done. So I'm going to look into it more as a landlord, see if there's any rules, regulations I have to watch out for. I think it could be a good thing. I think it could help other landlords. And while a lot of tenants, even anti-landlord groups, are pushing this, landlords don't want you to count your rent towards credit. That's not really the truth. Most landlords I know love to see their tenants have good credit and love to see their rent history, love to see if they pay on time. And if we have a tenant who moves on to buy a house, that's awesome, right? I consider that a really cool thing whenever that happens. And there's always renters, there's always tenants, there's people we can get into a property. And we love seeing responsible tenants and tenants move into better things. So I don't know many landlords who would be upset with that. Maybe there's a couple. I'm sure there's bad people in every business, but for the most part, that's a pretty cool thing. All right, love to hear what you think. We'll have more videos on our rental properties that we currently have. Flips, commercial properties, laundromats, liquor stores, other interesting stuff. And like I said, I'm supposed to be going to mediation tomorrow. That may or may not happen because the tenant is already playing games. Big surprise there. We'll see how it goes. All right, thanks for watching, and we'll be back soon.